It's like the whole objective usually is to make two movies worth of storytelling happen at one time in one runtime. And it's only on subsequent viewings do you like discover the multitudes of what is explored in the motion picture's runtime. Sure. But if you didn't already get the hints and the little wink wink nudge nudge of the secret movie within the main movie, as this one YouTuber had so eloquently put it with Honora, it's like sometimes I understand why people would prefer to just stream the same kind of quality of content rather than go out and seek it in a communal setting, especially if they're not sociable to begin with, like to have conversations post exhibition, you know? Or if it's not even one of those theaters where it's like, all right, I'm feeling the room. Let's fucking do this, guys. It's Jurassic World, you know? Like, and being there when someone goes, "Are you fucking serious?" Like with Bryce Dallas Howard, it's slow motion and heels, you know? Like, those, the dynamics of the movie going experience, of what cinema actually brings and allows there to be space for the exchange of. It's, you know, irreplaceable. Okay? Because it's like, unlike in like churches where it's like, the divine is the main objective and therefore no idolatry and stuff can actually be like discussed or anything. Within the cinema context, it is just another starting or jumping off point into being able to just relate to one another's experience or to just, you know, compare and contrast perspectives, much like how the movie they've just watched did. Because there's ways you can do that because it's storytelling. Like most of the time, if we had the time to tell someone our life story in the exact amount of time that we know to tell them in, to get them to understand where you're coming from, like 100%, like that's not a story. Like that's a serial almost. You'd have to have something fundamentally that would engage that person to think and see themselves within it or within you. The relatability and therefore the whole assimilation of perspective, this is the point of the picture. We framed it this way for this reason or some shit. It's like, yeah, I could just tell you that, or it could dawn on you in one way that I hadn't even anticipated this was securing, But the audience still saw it. And that's the communal aspect, that little bit that is incalculable and is only intuited and felt. That is that shit, okay? Like, you go after that. And sometimes people go after it from a perspective of respecting the culture and being like, I'm casting this person in this role for this grand narrative. I mean, yes, I've worked with them before, but, Josh Brolin is of the nature of working in like a film about, you know, drug trafficking gone wrong or something, or an interloper's journey within trying to make, you know, the best out of that opportunity that they can at witnessing such carnage. But in acknowledging that carnage, you also introduce yourself to that metamorphosis and reframing of your mind and the idea of the self, your soul, like the psyche, to adhere to the reality, So you're at peace and you have this demeanor because of how you look at why this happened, you know. And the cool thing about movies is it can completely hypnotize so many people at once. But it can also do it in so many different ways that people will find it personal, different perspectives or readings of the same picture. But I love in the way that if it's divisive, that means that there was basically almost an all encompassing thing about this picture that kind of distorts a generalized reading of it. Meaning it's like it's something so divisive and controversial, it's best understood through your own like reading of it. But not too abstract, you know? Like if it could at least have a log line online on the promotional material, you know? But by online, I mainly mean just by promotional material or word of mouth capabilities. You know, like classic films can be just distilled down to a couple of sentences that you could tell somebody whenever you're saying, oh, this movie was about this. Or like to just be like, I got back from this movie last night, bro. Oh my God. Like, you know? You're gloating about it like you got the best lay of your life. Because often enough, sometimes the profound wisdom that was already within is articulated in a way that just makes you go, bro, this movie, you gotta check it out. Like in some weird like way, fetishistically, you're just kind of like hoping this person goes to check this movie out. And if they have that same aggregate reading of like, whoa, there's something to this, you kind of feel validated for having, you know, your individuality of things. You know, it's almost like the give or take of liking a band that isn't popular yet, but you know deserves to be, only to resent it when the day actually comes that they become popular, you know. But then you like, you'll suddenly, the wisdom will dawn on you of being like, why does it fucking matter if everyone knows about it too? It's like, I wasn't the only one to know about them anyway. And even if I was, it's like, in that way, it's my fault that they even, you know, are on anybody else's mind at this point. Because, I mean, they were on mine. I'm guilty of the same crime. So it's like, come on, guys. But maybe it's from that exact same place why certain behaviors of other people will remind you of yourself at one point behaving in the same way or having that same mentality, but because it's rendered outside of your form now, it feels so like, it feels handicapping, like in a way where you're compelled to act, or at least you have to signify to yourself some form of repulsion, because by seeing it play out in front of you, you realize, you know, exactly how much noise one person can make to anybody. Like, anybody could lead themselves on to be bothered by anything enough to do something. But the individuality comes down to what they do that they say they were compelled to do because of this like repulsion. It becomes selfish in that sense, but it also raises the village and being like, yo, this is quality assurance, okay? Like, okay, this is all rambly and stuff at this point, but I love the idea of being able to tell so many stories through one set of runtime and being able to like make the most impact or make the most amount of minds actually start developing a reorienting, or at least attempt a recalibration and a reassimilation of everything as a whole, simply because of a good story, you know, that really blew their minds. Like, that's literally blowing their minds. They have to rearrange it right after, you know? You took one block too many. Your story just made their Jenga tower of consciousness just, but they still have the pieces there to pick it up. It's just the way it was laid out and what pieces were taken out. That sequence really, it did the job. And that's what you want to do. Get as many of those towers falling as you can, because they're going to reconstruct them, and then they start a new game. And you're giving the next film a better shot at actually, selling itself to the audience. Why? Because you did your fucking job in telling a really good story with the last film they saw. It's cool. I think it's karmic. But I don't know, man. Movies are like, I don't know, so crazy. Like, making them is so much fun and so brutal, but it also such a like rewarding and like thankfully time consuming thing, because sometimes whenever we present, we have so much free time on our hands and we don't know how to squander it enough. When you're creating something you really care about, there's never going to be enough of that time to be able to take it all in. And sure, the reception of the film that you worked on, it being good, is great, because then you can keep doing that, I guess, habitually. But if it does the job enough for enough people, there will be recognition. Like, and if you introduce a sense of timelessness into the whole equation, then even without box office return numbers, which are ultimately meaningless anyway, because the context in which we seek out sequences of numbers are arbitrary and meaningless after a while anyway. Especially when circumstances change, then it's like, who gives a fuck what GameStop's stock worth is? Like, I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? So it's like, when the timelessness aspect is introduced to the whole factor of creating art, and it still perseveres and creates an impact, and at least allows others to gauge their ambitions far greater than they had initially anticipated to, that's rewarding as fuck. Movies are great, though. They're a great unifying aspect. The conversations with people after movies too are fucking awesome. The insight that can be gained, even if they didn't even fuck with the movie, especially if they didn't fuck with the same movie, because in how much you fell in love with it, they have the objective reasoning of just being like, I don't know, man, this is what bothered me, and I couldn't stop thinking about it, the whole picture. And then blam, 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 blam. Not, exactly elegant in their structuring of laying it out like a video essay or whatever the fuck, but you can feel where they're coming from, because they genuinely are trying to break down something. Unless they're just, doing the counterpoint thing, in which case they're just trying to play improv, or challenge to who can make who laugh the most all the time. And if they're not playing that game, then it's it's a phony you're dealing with, so don't even worry about it. Because even if you're working and doing active jobs, making movies and stuff that people if you're Stanley Kubrick, or fucking Lynn Ramsey, it doesn't mean you have to be completely serious all the time. It just means you give a shit about what you're doing. It doesn't mean the tone of your approach or something behind the scenes must be a certain way. That's not what all these special features and shit are should be telling somebody, if there's any insight to be gained in watching all that material. The insight should be that anybody could do this, because human beings are naturally good at heart, at least the creative ones, and so they want to help each other out. So even with tyrants on the set, assholes, complete fucking David O. Russells, it doesn't matter. these people can still recognize some kind of greatness, at least within each other, to know that they can't let each other suffer alone under this guy. You know, so either they do something directly to change the circumstance and challenge the asshole directly, or they know that they're so embedded with the community, it's fine that this guy has that. We put up with this annoyance because we're all at least bonded under this temple. And at least we're united in that context. So, yeah. Movies. I need to watch in a while. But that's the objective of like filmmaking I want to do. Is like, it's almost like a Trojan horse. Where, yeah, you get what you paid for in terms of like being a general audience member, but if you ever wanted to see the same movie again, but you wanted a different experience and you changed hats or completely shed your old self before rewatching it, it can still provide some insight and different perspectives and mind-blowing Jenga tower destructing techniques. I need to light this shit better. Hold on.